This spring, I've had a reminder of God's creative presence right on my own front porch. A couple of juncos built a nest in one of the flower pots on the porch. First, they laid a couple of eggs. When I looked again, there were 5 eggs in the nest. Every time I would go out the front door to walk the dog or get the mail, I would check the nest. After a while, the eggs hatched, and I found these naked, vulnerable little chicks. And every time I peered into the nest, the parents would sit on a nearby branch or on the roof of my house, and they would chirp for all they were worth. These little birds, no bigger than my hand, yelling at me to get away from their brood. Again, days went by and the babies grew and grew until I looked into the nest, and where there had been 5, now there were only 3, and one was sitting on the edge, clearly making a break for it. As I watched in wonder, I saw them all abandon their birthplace and venture into the wild world, or at least onto the ground beneath the Japanese maple. Now, while it was thrilling to have seen their brief inaugural flight, it was also sad. For weeks, those babies had been my companions, a sign of hope, a blessing of life in the midst of a pandemic of death. And now they are on their own. And when I go out the front door, well, it's just my porch again. From the moment I saw those eggs, I learned that life goes on beyond our immediate experience, that creation continues outside this immediate moment. The birds don't care about the coronavirus. They seem to know what the poet Hafiz asserts when he writes, "I once asked a bird, 'How is it that you fly in this gravity of darkness?' And the bird responded, 'Love lifts me.'" God's love lifted those juncos not only to fly, but to build a nest and to nurture their young in this immediate moment, pandemic and all. Now, the second thing I learned from the babies is that God cares for us through all those who feed us and protect us, even those who seem too small. And sometimes, if we think we're too small, God is asking us to chirp for all we're worth on behalf of others. The third lesson, it's an obvious one. You can't stay in the nest forever. You have to grow up. The fourth lesson I learned, when you do venture into God's realm, your first attempts at flight may fall flat. You have to learn to be patient with your time on the ground. And finally, the last lesson I learned from the babies on the porch, always be prepared to fly. Don't forget, you are meant for the sky.